I thought I knew my wife. For 42 years, I believed I was married to an honest woman. A quiet woman. A woman who simply wanted peace. But the truth is, I didn't know her at all. The day I buried my wife, I realized something that still keeps me awake at night. The woman I loved never let me meet her family. And after her death, I finally understood why. My name is Richard Hale. I'm 67 years old. And this is the story of how an entire life can be built on silence and destroyed by the truth. Before I go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that you never questioned what they hid from you? If stories like this speak to your heart, please subscribe to this channel. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from, your city, your country, and whether you've ever discovered a painful truth far too late. Now let me take you back to the beginning. I met Evelyn when I was 25. She worked at a small public library downtown. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flirtatious. She had this calm, distant way about her, like she had already lived through something that broke her once. That should have been my first warning. But I was young. And loneliness makes warning signs look like mysteries. We talked for weeks before our first date. About books, music, dreams we never followed. But whenever I asked about her family, her voice softened. Her eyes drifted away. "They're not part of my life anymore," she'd say. I didn't push. Within a year, we were married. On our wedding day, I noticed something strange. My side of the church was full. Friends, cousins, old co-workers. Her side? Almost empty. No parents. No siblings. Just two people she introduced as family friends. That night, after the guests left and the music faded, I asked her, "Evelyn, where's your family?" She sat on the edge of the bed, still in her dress, and stared at her hands. "They're complicated," she said quietly. "I cut ties a long time ago." I remember saying, "Everyone has family problems." She looked up at me then. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "let's not talk about them." And that's where I made my biggest mistake. I thought love meant respect. And respect meant silence. So I stayed silent. Years passed. We built a life that looked peaceful from the outside. A modest house. No children. Something she always avoided discussing. Routine days. Quiet nights. But there were things that never quite made sense. She never talked about her childhood. Never kept old photographs. Never visited a hometown. Holidays were always just us. No visits. No calls. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear her crying softly in the bathroom. When I asked, she said it was nothing. Once, a man knocked on our door asking for directions. The moment she saw him through the window, her face went pale. She locked herself in the bedroom for hours. I told myself I was imagining things. Because it's easier to ignore the truth than to face it. When she turned 62, her health started failing. Fatigue. Pain. Doctor visits that ended with worried looks. Then came the diagnosis. Stage 4 cancer. Aggressive. Fast. The doctors spoke in careful tones. I held her hand while they talked about time limits. Weeks. Months at best. During those final weeks, she became quieter than ever. Like she was preparing for something I wasn't allowed to see. One night, as she lay in the hospital bed, I finally asked her, "Evelyn, is there anyone I should call? Anyone who should know?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "No one." I leaned closer. "Are you sure?" Her grip tightened on my hand. "Promise me something, Richard." "What?" "When I'm gone, don't look for them." That sentence landed heavier than her diagnosis. "Why?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "Because some doors," she whispered, "should stay closed forever." She died 3 days later. 42 years of marriage ended in a quiet hospital room. The funeral was small, just like she wanted. Or at least, that's what I thought. Halfway through the service, I noticed them. 3 strangers standing near the back. Well dressed. Watching. They didn't cry. They didn't pray. They observed. A woman about my age. A man with silver hair and sharp eyes. And a younger man who looked disturbingly familiar. After the service, the older man approached me. "You're Richard," he said. "Yes. I'm her brother." My heart skipped. She had a brother. "She didn't want us here," he continued. "But we came anyway." The woman stepped forward. "I'm her sister." I felt dizzy. All those years. All those lies. They handed me a card. "We need to talk," the brother said. "Soon." That night, alone in the house we shared for 4 decades, I broke the promise I made to my wife. I called the number. And that phone call changed everything I believed about my marriage. Because Evelyn didn't just hide her family from me. She hid her past. Her crimes. Her real name. And the man I saw at the funeral looked familiar for a reason. Because he looked exactly like me. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt different. Not empty, unfamiliar. Every sound echoed louder. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. At 6 in the morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold untouched. I stared at the phone in my hand, wondering if calling that number had been a mistake. But it was too late. By noon they arrived. The man who claimed to be her brother. The woman who said she was her sister. And the younger man? The one who looked like me. They sat across from me in my living room, on the same couch where Evelyn and I had spent decades watching television in silence. The brother spoke first. "My name is Thomas," he said. "That's not the name she told you, is it?" I shook my head. "She told me she didn't have siblings." Thomas smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "She had many talents," he said. "Lying was one of them." The sister leaned forward. "You deserve to know who you were married to," she said. "But you're not going to like it." I braced myself. Thomas took out a folder and placed it on the table. Inside were documents. Old court papers. Police reports. Newspaper clippings. And a photograph. My hands started shaking when I picked it up. It was Evelyn. Younger. But not the Evelyn I knew. Her hair was darker. Her eyes colder. And beside her was the younger man sitting in my living room. "That's Daniel," Thomas said. "Her son." The room spun. "Her what?" Daniel looked down. "Didn't deny it. She told you she never had children," the sister said softly. I couldn't breathe. 42 years. No children. No explanations. "She didn't just abandon us," Thomas continued. "She disappeared." According to them, Evelyn had grown up in a wealthy but deeply dysfunctional family. Her father was powerful. Her mother silent. When Evelyn was in her 20s, she married young. Had a son. But she wanted out. Out of the marriage. Out of the family. Out of responsibility. She staged her own escape. Changed her name. Cut contact. Left her child behind. And rebuilt her life. With me. I slammed the folder shut. "No," I said. "This isn't possible. She loved me." Thomas nodded. "I believe that," he said. "But love doesn't erase guilt. It just hides it." Daniel finally spoke. "She watched me grow up from a distance," he said quietly. "Letters she never sent. Money sent anonymously. Always hiding." My chest tightened. "Why tell me now?" I asked. The sister exchanged a look with Thomas. "Because of the will," she said. That word landed like a weapon. "What about it?" Thomas leaned back. "She left everything to you," he said. "The house. The savings. Everything." I nodded. That's my wife, I said. That's normal. No, he replied. It isn't. Because legally, she wasn't your wife. The world stopped. What? Thomas slid another document toward me. A marriage certificate. Not ours. Her first marriage. Never dissolved. She was never legally divorced. Which meant my marriage was invalid. 42 years. Gone. You were never her husband, Thomas said calmly. Which means you're not her legal heir. Daniel looked up at me for the first time. And I am. Silence swallowed the room. The sister broke it gently. She told us you were kind, she said. That you deserved peace. That's why she asked us to wait. Wait for what? I whispered. For her to die, Thomas said. They weren't here to mourn. They were here to take everything. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when Daniel stood up and walked toward the hallway. He stopped in front of a framed photo. Me and Evelyn. Taken 10 years ago. You know what hurts the most, he said. She chose you over me. I felt something crack inside my chest. I didn't know, I said. I swear. I didn't know. Daniel nodded. I believe you, he said. But belief doesn't change what I lost. That night, after they left, I sat alone again. But this time, the silence screamed. I opened drawers, closets, boxes I had never touched. And I found more lies. Old passports, different names, hidden accounts, and then a letter, addressed to me, in her handwriting. Richard, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you finally broke your promise. She knew. I didn't marry you for safety. I married you because you were the only man who ever treated me like a human being, not a possession. Tears blurred my vision. But my past was never done with me. Daniel exists. And he deserves more than I ever gave him. My hands trembled. I'm sorry for the life I stole from you. But please understand. I was running from who I used to be. At the bottom, one last line. They will come for what's mine. Let them. But don't assume this is the end. I didn't understand that sentence. Not yet. But I would. Because the next morning, I received a call from a lawyer. And what he told me made one thing very clear. Evelyn hadn't just left a will. She had left a trap. The lawyer's voice on the phone was calm. Too calm for the kind of words he was saying. Mr. Hale, he said, your late wife was meticulous. That word felt wrong. Meticulous was what you called an accountant. Or an engineer. Not the woman I slept beside for 4 decades. He asked me to come to his office that afternoon. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to sit in that house and let everything collapse on its own. But another part, the part Evelyn had always underestimated, wanted answers. The office smelled like old books and fresh coffee. The lawyer, Michael Grant, was a man in his early 50s with tired eyes and careful hands. She retained me 18 years ago, he said, opening a thick file. She updated documents regularly. Sometimes every year. For what? I asked. To stay ahead, he replied. He slid a document toward me. A trust agreement. She didn't just leave a will, Michael said. She created layers. Trusts inside trusts. Conditional clauses. I stared at the pages. Legal language. Cold. Precise. Your wife anticipated a challenge from her biological family, he continued. Specifically her son. My chest tightened. She knew Daniel would come. Michael nodded. She also knew they would try to invalidate your marriage. So they win, I said flatly. They take everything. Michael didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid another page across the desk. A clause highlighted in yellow. In the event that my legal spouse is declared invalid due to prior marital status, Richard Hale shall remain the sole beneficiary of Trust B, provided he fulfills Condition 7. What's Condition 7? I asked. Michael looked at me carefully. You must confront the truth of her past, he said. In person. My stomach dropped. Confront who? The people she hurt, he replied. And the one she hurt the most. Daniel. She left instructions, Michael continued. You are to meet them again. All of them. Together. And if I don't? I asked. Then trust dissolves, he said. And everything goes to Daniel. I laughed bitterly. So she forces me into a courtroom drama from the grave. Michael shook his head. No, he said quietly. She forces you into a reckoning. The meeting was scheduled for 3 days later. At the same office. I went home with a folder full of documents and a heart heavier than it had ever been. That night, I dreamed of Evelyn. She was standing at the foot of the bed, just watching me. Not apologizing. Not smiling. Just waiting. The next 3 days passed like a slow execution. Daniel called once. I don't hate you, he said. I just want what's mine. I understand, I replied. And I meant it. Because the more I learned about Evelyn's past, the more I realized. I wasn't the victim I thought I was. I was collateral damage. The day of the meeting, everyone arrived on time. Thomas. The sister. Daniel. And me. Michael sat at the head of the table like a referee. This is not a court, he said. But what's said here will determine how the assets are distributed. Daniel leaned back in his chair. My mother abandoned me, he said bluntly. She ran away and built a new life. He looked at me. With you. I didn't interrupt. For years, Daniel continued, I wondered what I did wrong. Why she didn't want me. His voice cracked for just a second. And then I find out she lived happily. Quietly. Without me. I swallowed hard. I didn't know. I said again. I swear. Thomas scoffed. She always picked comfort over consequences. He said. That's who she was. Michael raised a hand. There's more, he said. He opened another envelope. Your mother left a recorded statement, he said, looking at Daniel. To be played only if Condition 7 was activated. The room went silent. Michael pressed play. Evelyn's voice filled the room. Older. Weaker. But unmistakably hers. If you're hearing this, she said, then I'm gone, and my secrets are finally breathing. Daniel's face hardened. Daniel, she continued, I know you hate me. And you have every right to. His jaw tightened. I didn't leave because of you. I left because of what I became when I stayed. I closed my eyes. My family taught me that control was love. That obedience was safety. I married young to escape them, and trapped myself again. Daniel's hands trembled. When I ran, I was a coward. I left you behind because I was afraid I would turn into my parents. Her voice broke. Richard saved me, without knowing it. I opened my eyes. He gave me a life where no one owned me. Where I could breathe. But I paid for that freedom with your childhood. Silence. I didn't deserve forgiveness, she said softly. But I need you to hear this truth. The recording ended. No one spoke. Daniel stared at the table. Then he laughed. A hollow sound. So she explains herself, he said. After she dies. Michael cleared his throat. There's one final condition, he said. He turned to me. Richard, she left you a choice. I looked up. If you voluntarily relinquish Trust B, Michael said, Daniel receives everything. And if I don't? Michael inhaled slowly. Then Daniel must read her final letter. Out loud. To you. Daniel stiffened. What letter? Michael slid a sealed envelope across the table. Daniel hesitated. Then he tore it open. His eyes moved across the page. At first, his expression didn't change. Then his face went pale. What? Thomas demanded. Daniel's hands shook. She, he whispered. She left me nothing. The room froze. What do you mean nothing? Thomas snapped. Daniel swallowed. She left me debt, he said. Michael nodded. Your mother assumed responsibility for several financial obligations tied to her first marriage, he explained. Debts that legally transfer to the biological heir. Thomas stood up angrily. This is impossible. No, Michael said calmly. It's very possible. And very legal. Daniel looked at me. She protected you, he said. She destroyed me. I stood slowly. No, I said quietly. She tried to balance the scales, too late. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want her money, he said. I wanted her. And in that moment, I finally understood. This wasn't about inheritance. It was about abandonment. I looked at Michael. What happens now? I asked. He folded his hands. No, he said. You decide whether to walk away, or finish what she started. Because there was still one clause unread. And it involved me doing something I never thought I could. Something that would change Daniel's life. And finally end Evelyn's story. I didn't answer Michael right away. The room felt heavier than before. Like the air itself was waiting for me to decide who I was going to be next. Daniel sat across from me, his shoulders slumped, the anger drained from his face and replaced by something far worse. Emptiness. For the first time since he walked into my life, I didn't see an enemy. I saw a man who had spent his entire life asking a question no one answered. Why wasn't I enough? Michael cleared his throat again. There is one remaining clause, he said. She called it the resolution clause. He looked directly at me. Richard, if you choose to activate it, the trust restructures itself. Into what? I asked. Into a shared responsibility, he replied. Not shared money. Shared accountability. Thomas scoffed. She's dead. How does that help anyone? Michael ignored him. Evelyn believed money was the least important thing she left behind, he said. She wanted consequences to live longer than her. Daniel looked up. What does that mean for me? He asked quietly. Michael slid one last document toward me. If Richard activates the clause, he said, the debt transfers back into the trust. My breath caught. And then? Daniel asked. And then? Michael continued. Richard becomes the executor of your mother's unfinished obligations. Silence. You want him to clean up her mess? Thomas snapped. No. Michael corrected him. She wanted him to decide whether the mess deserved cleaning at all. Daniel stared at me. You take on debt you didn't create, he said slowly. For a woman who lied to you. I nodded. Yes. Daniel shook his head. Why? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth wasn't simple. I looked around the room. At Thomas, whose anger had calcified into bitterness. At the sister, who hadn't spoken in minutes but looked relieved someone else was finally holding the weight. And at Daniel. I loved your mother, I said. But that's not why I do this. Daniel frowned. Then why? I leaned forward. Because someone has to break the cycle, I said. And she was too afraid to do it while she was alive. Thomas laughed harshly. So you're the hero now? I met his eyes. No, I said calmly. I'm just tired of watching damage pass itself down like inheritance. Michael nodded. If Richard accepts, he said. The trust absorbs the debt, liquidates specific assets, and preserves the remainder. And Daniel? I asked. Michael turned to him. Daniel receives no cash payout, he said. But he is released from all financial obligation tied to his mother's past. Daniel's hands trembled. You'd do that? He asked me. I took a breath. Yes. Thomas slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. She ruined our family, and now you want to clean it up like she was some misunderstood saint? I stood. She wasn't a saint, I said. She was a coward. The word hung in the air. She ran, I continued. She hid. She built a new life instead of fixing the one she broke. Daniel flinched. But she tried to leave something better behind, I said. And I'm not going to punish her son for her failures. Thomas stared at me like I had insulted him personally. You don't owe him anything, he said. You're right, I replied. I owe myself something. Michael looked at me. Are you sure? He asked quietly. This choice is irreversible. I nodded. I've lived 42 years believing silence was kindness, I said. I won't make that mistake again. Michael slid the papers toward me. I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of more than ink. Daniel watched every stroke. When I finished, Michael gathered the documents. It's done, he said. Thomas stood abruptly. This family is finished, he said bitterly. Good luck with her ghosts. He left without another word. The sister followed, pausing only once. She loved you, she said softly. In the only way she knew how. Then it was just Daniel and me. Alone. He didn't speak for a long time. Neither did I. Finally, he looked up. I hated you, he said honestly. I thought you stole my life. I nodded. I might have, I said. Without knowing it. He swallowed. She chose you, he said. Over me. No, I replied gently. She chose escape. I was just a place she hid. Daniel looked down at his hands. I don't know how to feel, he admitted. That's okay, I said. You don't owe me gratitude. He hesitated. Then why does it feel like you just gave me something? I thought for a moment. Because I gave you what she couldn't, I said. An ending. A week later, the house felt quieter. Not empty. Honest. I boxed up Evelyn's things slowly. Not with anger. With understanding. Some people don't lie because they want to hurt you. They lie because the truth scares them more than loneliness. Daniel came by once. He stood in the doorway, unsure. I don't know where to go, he said. I nodded. Neither did she, I replied. He looked around the house. She lived here, he said. While I grew up without her. Yes, I said. And now you get to choose what you do with that knowledge. He took a breath. I don't forgive her, he said. I don't expect you to, I replied. But I don't hate you, he added. That felt like enough. That night, I found one last envelope in Evelyn's old suitcase. No legal seal. No lawyer. Just my name. Inside was a short note. You were stronger than I ever was. I knew you'd do the right thing, even if it hurt. I folded the letter carefully. For the first time since her death, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt finished. But the story wasn't over yet. Because the final part of Evelyn's plan didn't involve money. Or family. Or forgiveness. It involved a decision that would define the rest of my life. And I wasn't sure I was ready to make it. The decision didn't come all at once. It came slowly, like grief does when it stops screaming and starts whispering. 4 days after Daniel left, I lived inside that quiet house, surrounded by a woman I finally understood, and a life that suddenly felt unfinished. Not empty. Unfinished. I kept thinking about Michael's last words. The final clause doesn't involve money. Evelyn knew me better than I wanted to admit. She knew money wouldn't heal what she broke. She knew revenge would only rot what was left. What she didn't know was whether I was strong enough to choose differently. A week later, I drove to the address Michael had given me. A small community center on the edge of the city. Run down. Quiet. The sign out front read, Family Transition Support Program. I sat in the car for a long time. This was it. If I walked inside, my life would move forward in a direction I never planned. If I drove away, I could keep the house, the quiet, and the comfortable loneliness I already knew. I thought about Evelyn. How she ran. How she hid. How she survived instead of repairing. And I realized something painful. I had spent 42 years loving a woman who never learned how to face consequences. If I walked away now, I'd be doing the same thing. So I went inside. The director was a woman named Margaret, about my age. Kind eyes. Careful voice. "You're here about the endowment," she said. "Yes," I replied. She explained it to me. Evelyn had quietly funded the center for years. Anonymous donations. Small at first. Then larger. She never volunteered. Never showed her face. She paid to ease guilt, without confronting it. The final clause transferred control of the endowment to me. Full authority. I could shut it down. Redirect the funds. Or expand it. Margaret looked at me gently. "She believed you would understand what she couldn't finish," she said. I nodded. "I think I do." That night Daniel called. "I heard about the center," he said. I didn't ask how. "Yes," I said. There was a pause. "Was that her last move?" he asked. "No," I replied. "This one's mine." He exhaled slowly. "I don't know what to do with my life now," he admitted. "I spent so long being angry." "I know," I said. "So did she." Silence. "Come by tomorrow," I added. "If you want." He hesitated. "Why?" "Because," I said, "running from the past is easy. Building something better is harder." The next morning, Daniel arrived early. He looked different. Not healed. But lighter. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table where Evelyn and I once pretended silence was peace. "I won't replace her," I said immediately. "And I won't pretend what she did didn't damage you." He nodded. "I don't want a replacement," he said. "I just don't want to be alone with it anymore." That was the moment. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Choice. I offered him something Evelyn never did. A seat at the table. Over the next months, the center changed. We expanded counseling programs. Focused on families fractured by abandonment, control, and silence. Daniel volunteered. Not because he had to. Because he wanted to understand himself. Watching him help others hurt in familiar ways did something unexpected. It healed me. Not because he was grateful. But because he was honest. One evening, months later, we sat outside the center after closing. "I used to imagine confronting her," Daniel said quietly. "Telling her everything she ruined." I nodded. "And now?" I asked. "And now I realize," he said. "She would have run again." I smiled sadly. "Yes," I said. "She would have." Daniel looked at me. "You didn't," he said. "No," I replied. "I stayed." That was the quiet revenge. Not anger. Not punishment. Breaking the cycle she never could. A year passed. The house no longer felt like a shrine to secrets. I donated most of Evelyn's hidden assets to the center. Not in her name. In Daniel's. He tried to refuse. I didn't let him. "Legacy isn't about blood," I told him. "It's about responsibility." One evening, as I locked up the center, Margaret stood beside me. "She'd be surprised," she said. "No," I replied. "She planned this." Margaret smiled. "She didn't trust herself," she said. "But she trusted you." I thought about that on the drive home. Evelyn never let me meet her family because she was afraid I'd see who she really was. What she never realized was that I would have stayed anyway. Not to save her, but to help her face herself. She died before she learned that. But her story didn't end with her. It ended with a choice she never made. Mine. And if you're listening to this right now, let me tell you something I learned far too late. Silence is not love. Escape is not peace. An inheritance is not what you leave behind. It's what you refuse to pass forward. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. Share where you're listening from. And remember, it's never too late to choose differently. Even if the truth comes after goodbye.